Hello crafties, welcome to another video. My name is Infiniti and I am back with another Sentro knitting machine tutorial. So thanks first of all for sticking it out with me. I'm still kind of working out how I like to position my camera. I think this is almost the best fit that I'm going to get. So today's tutorial, I know we went over pulling it out of the box. Well, actually that was my initial video with the machine almost a year ago. I got this machine in the mail and I did a video where I pulled it out the box, put it together, and I showed you guys some of the after results once I first started kind of playing around with it. Then the first week of the knitting series, I showed you guys how to cast on briefly, how to cast off, and like actually cranking, and some tips on working it, as well as some of the tools that are included with the machine. And then last week, I know we went over casting off. Ooh, did you guys hear that thunder? We went over casting off and now I want to go into actually doing projects. So when I initially bought this machine, I bought it because I like to do charity things at the end of the year, and so this was like better on my wrists in my opinion, and I was able to churn out more stuff for the charity drives that I was doing. So yeah, hopefully I get to pick that back up this year because last year was a little special towards the end. But okay, so the yarn I'm using today is this Just Premier. It's Just Yarn by Premier, and it's worsted weight. I got this from the Dollar Tree, believe it or not. This is the label. It has 131 yards in it. I think I used a couple of feet for a granny square or something. I was going to do a tutorial, but I changed my mind. So yeah, that's what I'm using today. And I'm just going to cast on. So again, you want about 12 inches. Now, let's say for whatever reason you don't have a tape measure in your studio or craft room. What you want to do, or what I like to do, is I'll put the start of my yarn, like right, oops, at the threader, and I'll just wrap it around the ridges of these needles. And it will fall off, but roughly wrap it around the edge of these needles. And sometimes I'll do it like 1.5 to 2 times just to make sure I'll have enough yarn at the end for what I need to do. Now today's hat isn't going to be my double brimmed thing because that one's a little bit more I don't know, it's a little more weird when it comes to working it, so I wanted to save that for after I did like a beginner hat. So this is for you guys who've just pulled this bad boy out of the box and you're ready to get started. So I wrapped this thing around about 1.5 times, roughly, and I'm just going to drop that yarn down there. Now where I'm holding it with my thumb and index finger, I'm going to make a slip knot. Now the original instructions with the machine, they just say to lightly wrap your yarn, you know, when you're casting on, all that jazz, casting on. But when I first got the machine and I worked it, I didn't like that idea because I felt like you could easily lose that first stitch. So I started using a slip knot, and I just put it around that white needle that we have in the up position right here. And so once you do that, or once you know, put your yarn around that hook however you like, you're going to start wrapping and cranking the cast on. So when I crank, I'm going to make sure my yarn goes behind this first needle so that the hook isn't catching the yarn, and then the next needle, the hook will be catching the yarn. And I'm just going to do that very slowly. Now once you've been doing this about as long as I have, you can do it with some speed, but for the sake of today's tutorial, I'm slowing it down where I'm trying to. If this goes too fast for you at any point, I do have a video back on my channel on how to slow down videos. Also, I've noticed a whole increase of these videos within the year that I got this machine, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. There's actually tutorials coming out now. Because when I got it, I was at a complete loss. Like the instructions were really minimal, and yeah, it was a struggle, but I got it eventually. So yeah, that's the whole purpose of me doing this series, because I wanted to do more videos so people kind of have a clue of what they're doing, so they don't have to necessarily follow tutorials that are for other machines, because every knitting machine is not created equal. Okay, so I'm coming back to the beginning of my row, and I want this white guy to catch what I'm doing. Let me zoom in a little bit. So what I did is I just popped my yarn into my threader right before this white needle comes back down. Alright, and now it's caught my yarn. So I'm safe to like let it go. Now for this yarn, I tend to use the middle threader. It's not too thick, and I just, let it go. Now I do have a clean floor space, so sometimes I do drop my yarn down there, or I have my basket that's down there to hold that. Now if you have a surface that will like hold these suction cups in place, that's awesome. I have used mine forever, and it doesn't just hold like it used to. And also, this is a different surface. It's kind of like a floor, because I used floor tiles to remodel my table, so it's a little slippery. But you want to make sure your machine is secure, and if you're going to hold it down, let me zoom back out. If you're going to hold it down, just be sure you don't hit the black button. It's like the cartoons. Don't hit the black button. Don't hit the red button, so you don't throw off your counter. Alright, and that's row 2. Now the instructions, I remember, that come with the machine. Forgive me, I lost them. I do remember, though, they said to crank the first 3 to 4 rows very slow, because you don't want to drop stitches. And that's true. So I'm just doing that. I'm on row 2. And if you'll notice, if you haven't noticed before, every needle has the number, its number, like right here on this edge. So you'll always know what stitch you're on. We're just going to crank. This is row 3, by the way. Now I've hit row 4. I'm just going to keep cranking, I'm on row 8 already. So for those of you who knit by hand, you can probably already see the benefits of having a knitting machine, whether you're using this one or an Addy or whatever one. I know Michael's has their own as well. I haven't tried that out or really looked at the reviews on it yet, so I'm not really advertising it. But there are different brands of knitting machines, and like I said, they're all different. All of them have different needle counts. Technically, the Sentro has 2 more needles than the Addy. So there's that difference. There's also another size. It's a smaller size to this Sentro machine, which I kind of want, because I'm wondering what all you can do with it. Probably like cuffs and things like that, or like infant hats, I'm thinking, because it looked really small. I think it might only have 20 or so hooks on it. Okay, so you guys are probably like, okay, Infiniti, you're telling us to crank, but how many rows is a hat? So typically when I do my hats, there's this little range that I have. So for a regular sized hat, I do about 55 rows, maybe 60, to be on the safe side, and that is with or without a brim on it. Then for my slouches, I do anywhere between 75 to 100 rows. And yeah, that's basically the guide that I go by. So you just kind of keep cranking until you notice it's long enough, or until you feel like completely done with the project, because there's that too. Alright, so here I have cranked 60 rows, and I'm pretty satisfied. Look at all that fabric I have. So there's like, I guess, a reference. I was also checking out my edges on this one. Now, for this one, it actually looks like my tension was pretty good, even where I cast on, so I shouldn't have to do an edging on that one. Hopefully. Let's pray. This is how much yarn I have left out of that skein. So as I figured, one hat equals one skein of this. I usually don't work with this, so I kind of wanted to test that theory out. So now I want to cast off. So for that, again, I do have a video, last week's video for this machine shows you more in depth how to cast off. I'm going to be casting off camera today. This right here is my favorite needle for casting off. It's super long darning needle that came with the machine. So I'm going to pull my yarn out of my little tension thingy, and I'm going to again wrap enough yarn to just like go around the project maybe one and a half times, something like that. I think it's an old sewing trick too. I'm just going to go around it. Rough estimate. Yeah. So here is where I'm going to be snipping my yarn. And I am going to actually just pull my yarn out of my threader as well. And I'm going to hold it in a vertical position, just like the instructions say. And I'm going to crank a row without yarn. Now you can wait until you get to, like wait till after you crank your row without yarn to snip it. I just kind of do it before because I know it's not going to eat anymore or need any more yarn. Alright, so like I said last week, I try to actually leave a few more needles before I get to this point, before I continue cranking. But this is where I thread my long darning needle. If it wants to thread tonight, that'd be great. Okay, this is where I thread it, and I just start weaving and casting off my stitches. Again, being very careful not to drop any because it's such a pain. If you should drop any stitches, I recommend using a 4.5mm crochet hook, or the one that they supply with the machine, which I have lost long ago. It's around here somewhere. It might be in my crochet hook bowl. I'm not really sure. Just gonna pull that yarn on through there like that. Alright, and I'll meet you guys back once I have cast this whole hat off. Alright guys, so I've cast off my little hat to be, and this is what it looks like. Of course the ends, you'll notice roll up on you. That's normal for this. Don't worry about it. And this is my other end. This is my bottom end that I cast on, and if I zoom in ever so slightly, it doesn't look as bad. Like if you have been trying to use this machine on your own and you've noticed that your tension might not have been the greatest at the beginning, yeah, this doesn't look as bad as some of the cast-ons that I have done in the past. So I'm good with this. Now, if your project didn't turn out so great along this end, what you could do maybe is kind of inverse this edge and like sew it in like this. You can make a longer piece of fabric and then make a wider brim, so that way the ends are kind of tucked away in your project. Or if you have any kind of crochet knowledge, you can crochet a band around it and kind of help that out. I have done a series of all of that over the course of this machine in my house. Okay, so what I want to do now is actually finish this hat off. So I always turn my work inside out. Less oopsies and uh-ohs later. And I'm going to pull off my casting off needle. Now what I like to do for this is I will take my string that I cast off with once I have turned my project inside out. And I'll just pull and pull, making sure those curled up edges are actually on the side that's facing me, so that when I flip this back on the right side, it's not showing up at the top. I also want to say the number of rows for these hats, it also depends on the yarn you use. Now this is a medium worsted weight yarn, so it was thick enough for me to do 60 rows and that be sufficient. But if you're using a like DK weight, you're going to want to do more rows. Now this, I've cinched it closed, the top of our hat, and I'm just going to thread this thing. I am at a loss for words. It'd be nice if I could do English today. Darning needle. I'm going to thread my darning needle. Might have to snip that end right there, a little raggedy. And I'm going to just insert it. I wish I had my one with the bigger eye. That would be great. But anyway, so after I do that, I'm going to want to secure this because I've cinched it closed, but it'll come apart obviously if I just leave it like it is. So what I usually do is I find a loop that's close to the string that's coming out of the hat, and I insert my needle, pull it up a little bit, and I insert it into the loop that I just made with the thread or the yarn, and I get a little knot in there. So that way that's not going to budge, but you can still get a finger in that hole if you tried. So what we just do is kind of spread that open and weave it in any way that we like, but neatly. I'm a fan of the whip stitch. Alright, and we just do that until that hole is good and closed and it's never going to come apart, ever. Now, what you could do once you get done sewing this is use Fray Check. I don't have mine on me right now, but you could use a bottle of Fray Check, or not the whole bottle, you know what I mean. It's like fabric glue though, and you don't have to use very much, and it secures your seam. Okay, and so now that I am pretty sure I'm done sewing, I want to insert my needle again somewhere near where I have this string coming out of my project. I'm going to pull up. I'm going to insert my needle into that loop I just made. I'm just going to knot that in there. Now you could sew this down further into your project, or you can just snip it. I'm just going to kind of sew into these back loops of this project. And then I'll cut my yarn. Alright. And then I can kind of flip that back on the right side if I'd like. So this is a standard sized hat. You know, people who like the close snug fit, this is perfect for them. It's a good gift idea. If you're a beginner crafter and you like gifting handmade things, this is probably a good thing for you. I will probably be bringing this video back up at the end of the year. Yay! So I'm going to use pretty much, well, not the same method. I'm going to employ a similar method once I rethread my needle. There we go. Now this long string down here, you could have cut it before you threaded your needle, but you don't have to. You can wait. It's already knotted, so to speak, so what I want to do is just kind of work under these loops in here under this wrong side of this project. in a way that's not noticeable on the other side, and then I just keep weaving it in and out of that space. Now usually this string I leave right here because I have tags that I like to sew on, and this gives me a marker, but I could literally sew my tags on anywhere. I'm just weird like that. Alright, and you can find one of those little bars to finish off. I like to go kind of, I think I'll go and do this one. And just like I knotted that yarn up in the center of my hat, I'm going to do it here as well. Just pull that snug. And again, later on I'll probably go over it with some fray check. So I'm going to leave this little thing there just to remind me. Alright, and I'm done. So this was a very beginner, very simple, very easy project. You know, I hope it was helpful. I hope this whole video was helpful to you guys. If so, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on awesome weekly content like this. I post typically knitting tutorials on Wednesday. This Sentro knitting series is a little mini series that I thought up and have been planning for quite some time, so I'm glad to be able to do that now. Don't forget to check out my other social media. I am on pretty much everything except for Snapchat, so I got a little something out there for everybody. Reddit has been really active, and I'm really kind of happy with that, so that's pretty cool. I also have an Etsy store and a Teespring shop for merch, so don't forget to check those out as well. All my links are down in my description below. And if you want to keep up with projects that I am slowly releasing in my store or have yet to release, they are on my blog, which is also in my description. Okay, and until next time guys, happy making!